Many years ago, George Carlin crafted a comedy routine around a TV weatherman. He was checking out the radar, warning of threatening thunderstorms, when he spotted some incoming Soviet ICBMs. Well, he said, I guess we don't have to sweat the thunderstorms. News broke last night that doesn't quite fall into that category, but almost. The North Koreans, it turns out, have violated an existing agreement with the United States and have in fact been developing nuclear weapons. A senior North Korean official admitted as much in a meeting earlier this month with our Assistant Secretary of State, James Kelly. It's not altogether clear whether they already have such weapons, but the implication was that they do. And they were belligerent, not apologetic about it. In case you've forgotten, President Bush singled out North Korea, together with Iraq and Iran, as part of the so-called axis of evil. The Bush administration has been arguing the urgency of taking action against Iraq precisely because it doesn't yet have nuclear weapons, but very likely could in another couple of years. Perhaps the North Koreans, worried that the United States might be considering preemptive military action against them, perhaps they are playing their nuclear card as a warning. In any event, like Iraq, North Korea has a tyrannical leader and a brutal regime with a history of supporting terrorism. They also have intermediate-range missiles and are working on the intercontinental variety. Do they in fact have atomic weapons? The CIA believes that they do. A little later in this broadcast, I'll be talking to the President's National Security Advisor, Condoleezza Rice. But first, here's Nightline correspondent John Donvan.
What we knew then, it was 1994, was that the North Koreans had made a deal.
This agreement will help to achieve a long-standing and vital American objective, an end to the threat of nuclear proliferation on the Korean Peninsula.
What we know now is that the North Koreans have been running a secret nuclear weapons program for some undetermined period of time.
This is a serious violation of the agreed framework. The fact that North Korea has acknowledged a program to enrich uranium for nuclear weapons constitutes a serious violation of the agreed framework.
The administration has had several days to digest this information, days in which the president won a vote in Congress giving him clearance to wage war on Iraq. In fact, the U.S. envoy who first heard this from the North Koreans in person on October 4th spoke to reporters on October 5th in South Korea, and if you didn't know what he was talking about, his diplomat's vocabulary didn't give much away.
I felt that our exchanges in Pyongyang were frank, as befits the seriousness of our differences, and they were useful too.
But now it is out. North Korea is admitting to doing exactly that thing the president can only accuse Saddam Hussein of, working on nuclear weapons. In a perverse way, maybe it would be easier right now, at least more convenient for the White House, if the North Koreans had not come clean, had kept up the deception, which, it almost seems, is what was expected of them.
I would say over the summer, our analysts became convinced because of a growing body of evidence that North Korea was pursuing a covert uranium enrichment program, put it that way.
There are a lot of reasons that this is a bad time from the U.S. perspective for the North Koreans to be coming clean on this. One of them is that President Bush, according to his aides, was about to take what they call a bold approach to improving the relationship with North Korea, and then this happened. A bold approach would also have been a new approach. In his State of the Union address this year, the president put North Korea on notice. It was on a short list now.
States like these and their terrorist allies constitute an axis of evil, arming to threaten the peace of the world.
The Bush administration was never enthusiastic about the relationship with North Korea that it inherited from the Clinton administration. Under those terms, the U.S. was committed to sending the North Koreans free oil and free food in exchange for North Korea dismantling one nuclear reactor, locking away its available plutonium, and allowing inspectors to verify this. To the Bush team, this smacked of appeasement.
So they were determined to come in and do two things. One, ignore North Korea, not reward their belligerent actions or intention-getting devices. And then two, take a very tough and demanding line, then enforce the treaties.
Cirincione says that Clinton's agreement did slow down North Korea's weapons development program.
Don't get me wrong, the agreed framework has worked. They have not been producing plutonium since 1994. They could have 50 bombs worth of material now if it weren't for that agreement. But on the side, they've been developing a backup plan.
And that's another reason this does not come at a good time. If all bets are off, the North Koreans can go back to using the plutonium they locked away under the deal to start making weapons. That will get them there faster. This when the president is concerned about nuclear weapons reaching the hands of terrorists. But the main problem right now is figuring out what this does to the campaign against Iraq. For example, if Saddam faces a possible war for his sins, how does the administration justify anything less for North Korea? Kurt Campbell was a Deputy Assistant Defense Secretary in the Clinton administration.
It becomes very difficult for them to engage in diplomacy at the same time that they're saying that this very diplomacy is impossible with Iraq. You hear frequently from Bush administration officials that moral clarity in terms of dealing with these despised regimes is absolutely critical in terms of keeping the high ground.
But what about military action with North Korea? Anyone you ask calls it a potential nightmare. North Korea has the world's 5th largest army and, it is now assumed, nuclear weapons.
You cannot contemplate war in North Korea without the certain recognition that hundreds of thousands of South Koreans will die.
The North remains an enigma, desperately poor, politically a prison for almost anyone who lives there, yet lately its leaders have taken steps to end their isolation. And now this admission about its nuclear program.
What is your theory on what the North Koreans were doing by coming clean about this?
We honestly don't have enough information to understand North Korean motives. Was this a dare? We have a nuclear weapons program, what are you going to do about it? Or was this an admission hoping for a breakthrough?
Whatever the motive, the North Koreans have set off alarms here in the nation's capital. One more crisis on a pile of them for an administration that wants to focus on one problem, and it is called Iraq. I'm John Donvan for Nightline in Washington.